the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundy, what's been going on in the NHL in the last week?
One of our more busier weeks. We actually got a lot here to kind of go through. Some kind of bigger stories. Got some milestones. So we can. What do you want to do? You want to work top to bottom or jump all over the place? What are we feeling? Do you want to lump
Uh,
all of the milestones together?
yeah, that might be the best way to do it.
Cat. Um, I guess pick whichever one you want to go with first, and we'll dive into that one. Whichever one you're feeling.
Yeah. So let's do a couple of the lightning ones together, I suppose, since there's a few of those. Earlier this week, Nikita Kucherov hits 800 career points. Uh, just tonight, he hit 500 career assists. So that was pretty stellar. Steven Stamkos earlier in this week tied and then ended up passing just tonight Wayne Gretzky in career power play goals at 204. He is now tied with Joe Sakic, just above Gretzky at 205.
Which is pretty elite company to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe they're tied for, I think it was 17th all time, something like that, somewhere in the
Okay.
mid-teens. They're at 204, 205, and Ovechkin is number one on that list, obviously, and I believe he's at like 305. So 100, 100 more is the top of the list. So they're pretty close to that very top of the list there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
pretty impressive for Stammer, and I think as long as it sounds like he's not getting traded out of Tampa, um, but I think if he ends up re-signing
yeah.
and sticking around there, I think he can definitely, you know, probably will still average about, I'd say, on average, 15 or so for the next
Yeah.
5 years or something. So he's definitely gonna get up there in the list by the time his career is all said and done.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Anytime Stamkos gets close to another big milestone for goals, uh, it he doesn't play any differently, but Kucherov absolutely does. He is looking for Stamkos on the ice 24/7. As soon as any of the guys he plays with are close to a milestone, he's just looking to get the puck on their stick. So, if they stay on the same power play together, I could definitely see him, if he sticks around, at least hitting 250 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, yeah.
A bit of an unsung guy you don't hear his name thrown around too much, but Adam Henrique reached 500 career points earlier this week. He
Oh,
spent most of his career with the Devils. He's with the Ducks right now, I believe.
Auston Matthews just got a hat trick.
Oh my God,
It
this
sounds like
dude
a
is
Leafs home
automatic.
game.
Yeah.
The amount of hats on the ice is actually kind of nuts.
Yep. One of my buddies in one of our group chats was saying that he he's at the game and it's like insane how many Toronto fans are there. And like, yeah, whenever you're going to any game that involves an original six team, they they just flock to those games. There's so many original six fans that
Yeah.
it's absolutely crazy.
Sorry to Adam Henrique there. Kind of overshadowed him once again.
Hey, he's got 500 career points. I don't think he
Yeah, he
cares too
does.
much.
Also with that action, I'm just looking at now. That's insane. Matthews now has 37 goals through 42 games this season. Like
Yeah.
that's just like absurd. And the fact that it's also like 37 goals and 17 assists. Like he's got 20 more goals and assists. Like that's
He
absurd.
yeah, he is he's making it look like he could hit 70. And like there's no reason to believe he can't with what he's doing right now.
Yeah, and if he hits 70, like, we even talked about it a bit earlier. Tough for Kucherov, tough for McKinnon. Like Matthews is unanimously winning uh the Hart if he actually hits the 70 mark. Which I
Yeah,
mean,
probably.
I didn't think, I don't remember when we were talking about it at some point, and people were talking about McDavid, hitting 70 goals in a season. I was like, no, like, you know, it's so hard in an 82 game season to actually get there. But Matthews is legitimately actually making a very strong case for it. So that's going to be that's going to be absurd if we actually see a player manage to score 70 in a single season.
Yeah, and I think a big reason that he definitely could is that I think it's harder for some of the guys who are very consistent. They score every night or every other night. Matthews scores a lot of goals in bunches. Like, how many hat tricks
Yeah.
does he have this year? He's probably got 3 or 4. Like,
Yeah,
he
I think he's got three. I think this is his third now.
Yeah, all it takes is around game 60, he scores 2 hat tricks in a row, he scores 4 goals and then 2 goals the next game, and like it's he right there, that's like 6 goals in 2 games, and that just boosts the numbers so much. Like it when you're capable of almost at will just like scoring 3 goals a game, it's hard to keep a guy like that off the score sheet.
Yeah, it really is. So that's actually his third hat trick, or four. Sorry, I forgot he had two back to back in the first two games of the season. So he's got
Yeah.
4 hat tricks on the season, and he's got 8 2-goal games, which is like just
That's
nuts. Like,
that's
yeah, when he's
absurd.
scoring, he's scoring in bunches, and
We like just
like he
got
had a
to the halfway point of the season. Like those sound like end of the year Ovechkin stats.
yeah, like there was a stretch throughout December where, and this was just going games in order. Boston had 2 goals, and then next game Ottawa none, Nashville 2, Islanders 1, Rangers, then Columbus, then Rangers again had 2 in all of those. Buffalo, he had 1, then Columbus he had 2. Like just in December alone, he was just scoring at will. Like that's so impressive the way he's been playing this season.
Yeah, and like it's it's weird to say that it might be early to say it. Not even because of him, but because of where the league is. But the league scoring, and we've actually gone over this before on the podcast, how much it's gone up in the past couple years and over the last decade. If scoring keeps going up, we might, for the first time in 30 years, it might be possible to see somebody challenge for what Gretzky has called his most difficult record to break, and that's hitting 50 goals in his first, what was it, 38 games? Like,
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see that one get touched. I
I
think
doubt
that
it.
one's probably will be like, because I mean, if you think about it, Matthews is at 37, he's been playing lights out, and that's through 42 games now.
Yeah, so he's still
So to
under a
think,
goal per game, and you have to score
yeah,
12 more than games played by 38. So it's definitely tough,
yeah,
but
to
if they uh
realistically
if they
beat
can
it,
put another person on that top line to really complement him and Marner, and if scoring keeps going up in the league, it's not near as impossible as it's looked in the past.
yeah, I think it's still I think that's one that I think will just never get touched. And the only way if is probably you probably have to score in every single of those 38 games, and if you don't, you probably need, I would say, at least 6 or 7 hat tricks at the bare minimum to even make a
Yeah.
somewhat case for it. Um, but it's definitely not out of the question, though. I'll say that. But do I think it'll ever get broken? Like, no. Um,
Yeah. You would almost
but yeah,
need
the way
some luck.
scoring's been going,
You
though.
need a decent amount of luck with that, if for nothing else, the scheduling, you know? If you
Yeah,
get a team like Columbus or something, 3 out of those 38 games or something, and also like
yeah.
one they're running the backup goalie or a goalie's injured or something, like
Poor
it would be
Columbus.
really tough. But
Poor Columbus.
They were the first one that came to mind
Shit.
because I think he scored a hat trick early in the year on them, and also they're in the same division.
Columbus just getting dogged right now. That's tough.
Hey, you
No,
know
but I
what?
do get I do
That's
get what
better.
you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, enough about the Leafs. Now we've given them their moment here. What was the other one? I think we had one more milestone, didn't we? Or do we have
Mitch
two?
Marner is the fastest Maple Leaf to
Oh
600 points.
fuck. Yeah. And honestly, um, but you read the next one off. I'm gonna check because I feel like Matthews is probably gonna actually beat that. Like I feel like Marner isn't
Uh,
gonna hold that record for that long.
yeah, I can't remember if he was because I remember they were close. I don't remember
Wh-
if Matthews was just past him for games played or just under him, but
Um,
I remember they were close. Um, but as well, we had one more milestone for players' careers, and that's Brad Marchand got to career point number 900. So
good for him. He's really
900 for the Rat, and I mean, it's funny to call him that, but 900 points, like you don't just come up on that.
so Marner hit 600 in 547 games. Matthews right now after he's got 4 points on the game. He's at 596, only four away in 522 games. So yeah, give it half a week. By the end of next week for sure, Matthews will have now taken that record from Mitch Marner. So
Yeah, can't
Marner
have shit in
can
Toronto.
enjoy it while he's got it for a bit. But it's surprising how many Leafs records are like being broken now and seeing like what's Mitch Marner now? Like he's is he top like 6 all time in points for the Leafs or something?
Would not surprise me
Oh,
in the least. They have had a shockingly few amount of superstars and like Hall of Fame level talents on their team, considering they're they're an original six team. Them and the
he's
Rangers really
7th.
haven't had near as many as you would
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah, he's 7th right now and Matthews is now one away from tying the 8th spot and two away from moving into 8. Like that's crazy for how long this franchise has been around, the fact that like they don't even have a guy who's scored 1,000 points as a member of the
Yeah.
Maple Leafs. Like that's
Yeah, that's wild. And like I don't think it's a stretch to say that Matthews is the best Maple Leaf of all time right now.
yeah.
Not even like when his 4-year contract extension ends. Like I'd say right now that's probably true. Like there's an argument for a couple of guys in there, but the fact that it's such a close argument is crazy for such a storied franchise.
Yeah, like Matthews by the time he like give it by probably not the end of next season, but like halfway through the following season, he'll be the number one all-time leader in goals. And then that's just going to
Yeah.
continue to grow. Like he's probably going to end his career with actually I don't even know. I don't even know what number
It's
you
hard
can go
it's
with for
so
him.
hard to hazard a guess because if if he's healthy and if he plays enough games, he might be the first player to hit 1,000. But that's also an insane thing to say considering nobody's hit 900. But I definitely think if he's healthy, he'll hit at least 600, probably 700.
Yeah, I love doing these just to be like, oh, just to kind of give a general reference. So Matt Sundin is the all-time leader in goals with 420. 420.
Nice.
Um, if the current pace Auston Matthews is on, if he plays the same amount of games that Matt Sundin played, which is 981, Matthews is on pace to have 633 goals. So 213 more, which is
And
like
633
absurd.
before he hits 1,000. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like, will he maintain on that pace? Like, probably not. And obviously, there's going to be injuries, and that can play a role and stuff and whatnot. But like the pace he's on right now is just insane.
Yeah. Not to mention, it's not like he's been healthy his whole career. Not only has he had injuries, he's had wrist injuries. That's got to be one of the worst injuries you could get as a guy scoring goals for a living. So
Yeah.
getting through that too is absolutely insane.
Yeah. All right. Now we're done with the Leafs, I think. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
We've
Um,
gassed them up enough.
we've got a couple other records. We got a couple franchise records. We got the Seattle Kraken set a franchise record with, I believe, at the time we wrote down 9 wins in a row. I believe it ended at 9. It might have got to 10. Um,
I'll double check.
yeah. And the Edmonton Oilers, we have written down that they set a franchise record. They set the franchise record with 9 wins in a row. So they're currently at 11 in a row now, as
No,
of
they said
right
it
now.
with 10.
It
10 was
was
the
10.
record. Yeah.
So before they had only reached 9. Like Seattle, the Seattle Kraken franchise won 9 games in a row uh before the Edmonton Oilers did. Or
Yeah.
like that's nuts. Dude, the Gretzky's Oilers never went 10-0. Like you'd expect somewhere in
Nope.
their history they went fucking 18-0, right? Like they have so
Yeah.
many absurd records. It's crazy that this is the franchise record for wins in a row.
Yeah, and they're currently at 11 right now, and they're up on Seattle right now, so they're pushing for 12. Like, I mean, we talked about 'em beginning of the year, and their slow start, and like the way they've been playing lately is they're a scary team again. We're seeing that team that we thought
Yeah.
we're gonna see, and at one point we were even talking about how, what was it? The Oilers were, I think, 18 back of the Kings.
Yeah.
And now it's sitting, if Edmonton holds on to beat Seattle tonight, they'll have the same amount of games played as LA with 41, and Edmonton will be ahead of them,
Yeah.
which
LA
is
went
just
on a
like
huge
nuts.
skid and Edmonton is just been on fire. Like this is exactly what I was talking about. I mean, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, but I know there was one episode of the podcast where you were saying that it's probably too late to be able to come back. And I remember saying that if McDavid and the boys just turn it on, they could just go on a run and get into the playoffs. And obviously, I did not expect the absolute implosion over in LA. They've been playing abysmal hockey lately, but
Yeah. So my thing
the
was
Oilers
it
have been
like,
great.
yeah, my thing was that they could obviously go on a heater. Like we know what that team was capable of. The thing was is I didn't expect a team like LA to completely fall off a cliff.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah, and they've
expect the LA Kings to lose 8 or 9 in a row or something, because then with Edmonton winning all those immediately right there, that closes the gap in that 9 game span.
yeah,
Um, but with the Kings, man, I mean, like their biggest problem is they got just absolutely bent over and fleeced by Winnipeg. Winnipeg
yeah,
completely just ruined them, and that's going to be an issue now that LA is going to have to deal with for the next 8 years now, and that's going to be uh, I don't even care if Dubois figures his shit out. What uh what Winnipeg has now is just like Velarde
they have a
alone
great
is
goalie.
10 times the player that Dubois is, and then you add an Iafallo, who's a great depth, third liner and a beast in the playoffs, and then you got Kupari, still a young player that could take off. Like, man, it's just it's tough for the Kings. They got
Yeah,
a lot of issues they got to figure out if they really want to. And not only that, I mean, they put all their money into hoping that Jordan Spence would really take off this year, and that Brant Clark was ready, so they decided to move on from Sean Dursey. Brant Clark's kind of, I mean, he's still young, so not to bash him or anything, but like he's only come up recently to join the Kings. He's struggled in his games that he's played. Jordan Spence isn't doing too much. He's got 13 assists, no goals in 37 games. And Sean Dursey on the Coyotes has 7 goals, 18 assists for 25 points in 36 games.
Dude,
He has
Jersey
just
looks like
been
a stud.
he has been lights out for them. I would not be shocked if when he needs a new contract, he's getting a 7-year deal or something. I think he's going to be a huge part of that Coyotes team uh, for the near future. So, kind of a flip. We were kind of hyping up the Kings and bashing on the Oilers. Now we're hyping up the Oilers, and we're really starting to question. Like at the rate the Kings are going, do they even make the playoffs now? Like I know they're in a spot, but
I mean, if they keep losing games at the rate they are, they're not. And so many of them have been multiple goal comeback losses.
yeah,
Like in their last 10 games, I think it's like 6 of them they've lost in the third period when they're up by 2 goals or more. And they lose both those goals and then they go down and lose the game. Like, and they're not these are all happening in regulation. That's not even in overtime. Like they're getting so few points right now. It's absolutely astounding. So hopefully they
yeah.
can figure their shit out and give Edmonton a bit of a run towards the end of the season here.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of an interesting battle because again, I still think as well as the Oilers have been playing, I think the way the Canucks have been playing, I doubt Edmonton catches Vancouver.
No,
Even though if
I don't
Edmonton
think
wins,
so.
it's only 11 points, but the Canucks have been balling out. Like it's but I think Edmonton's kind of now that they're in a playoff spot, I don't see them falling out of it again. I think they're gonna now that they're locked in and they're not falling back out of it throughout the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, while we're on the Oilers, McDavid passed Glenn Anderson for 4th most points in Oilers history. So
Yeah,
McDavid
he's
continues to
been
climb
climbing the
the
ranks.
Oilers franchise history records. Um, do you think that McDavid, when all is said and done, will be the all-time franchise leader in points in Edmonton?
Um, that's tough. Um, I'm just looking how many does Gretzky have with?
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up. I believe it's around 1800 with the Oilers.
That sounds about right.
1669.
1669. Nice. Um, I
That's a
mean McDavid's
crazy
already
that's a
at
crazy
908.
number, but that's doable.
I think
Like
the
assuming
the
he
biggest
stays
thing
there for his
is
career,
yeah,
that's
and
very
that's the
doable.
big thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does. It's tough, and it was interesting with Draisaitl's comments the other day. He said, at the end of the day, we both want to win here, but I'm going to do what's best for me. Connor's going to do what's best for him. Um, it's tough though because I mean, as well as the Oilers have been right now, if they make the playoffs and it's a first round exit or second round exit, the biggest thing for me is I just kind of wonder how much of an impact does it have on McDavid's decision if Draisaitl decides to leave?
I it's such a weird situation because if the roles were reversed and McDavid was his contract was up first, you know that if McDavid leaves, Dreisaitl's the fuck out of there, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
like I
but
I
I think
wonder,
it's
and like
different the other way around.
this isn't a dig at Draisaitl, but like, does he have the balls to pack his shit and leave with McDavid there? Like that's not supposed to be a dig on him at all. It's just like uh you're actively choosing to not be on the best power play we've seen in years. You know? Like you're playing with the best player in the world right now, and
Yeah,
to actively choose to go somewhere else, like, and I mean, granted, he's gonna get paid if he goes somewhere else, like at least
and that's the
14 mil,
thing
I think. Like he's
is
gonna
like how
get
much.
massive money.
Yeah, that it's how much does money play into it? If you sign a Draisaitl to a 8-year deal at 14 per year, and then McDavid's deals up, and then what do? Do you give McDavid like 15 and a half? Like, does he even get up to the 16 range? Like, then you've got, say, $30 million in your cap tied into those two.
That makes your
It's
job tough.
I think when it's all said and done, I think McDavid, regardless what happens, I do think he does stay with Edmonton. And like if he
Even if
signs an 8-year deal,
Draisaitl
he'll pass
leaves.
Gretzky. Yeah. I think
You think he's
McDavid
staying
will
regardless?
I think he'll stay regardless. Draisaitl, I think is really a 50-50. Just based on
Interesting.
kind of the emotions you see from him in the playoffs, and when they lose or there's adversity, he just shuts out and doesn't talk to the media. He's very agitated and whatnot. I think if the Oilers don't win a cup within the next 2 years, or at least at the very minimum, early round exits, I think Draisaitl could very well leave if you've got a team like the LA Kings, who offer him like the bag. Because I could see
Yeah.
the Kings being a team that is trying to find that now kind of maybe next replacement for Kopitar's kind of coming near the end. And
Yeah.
obviously Dubois is not going to be that. So yeah, I think Draisaitl is a 50-50, but I think McDavid stays, and he by the time he's done, like if he signs an 8-year deal, even a 6-year deal, 5 maybe,
Yeah.
he'll pass Gretzky and be the all-time leader in that.
Yeah. And I don't see any way if he does stay. I think it's an 8-year deal. I don't think he goes anything less. I think because
Yeah.
he'll be signing that when he's what, 28, 27? Like that's when you cash in for your money. That's when you sign your 8-year deal that takes that's your big payment contract in your career. I know he's
already got
had
his
he's already
he's
had
gonna
a
have a
massive
second.
one, but traditionally that's how it works, and
Yeah.
it would be very interesting to see one of these guys be like, and I think I've talked about this before with you on the podcast, but a guy just be like, man, I really want to fucking win, and like McDavid's like, all right, time to get a cup, league minimum, Colorado, easy slam dunk cup win, and then he gets paid next year, because you never know what's going to happen if he gets injured or something, right? So that
Yeah.
money after that is not guaranteed at all. But like,
Yeah.
if he signs for that low, that Stanley Cup is all but secured. Like, if you
Yeah.
pick the right team, a team like a Colorado or a couple of years ago, a Tampa, Rangers, like one of these really stacked teams already looking to contend, you add a McDavid or a Draisaitl, like that would be nasty.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting. Like the McDavid one, I think is pretty safe, but the Draisaitl one, man, the more and more you watch each year, it's like,
These guys
and again,
want to
I think it
win,
was
and it's
also
not
like,
happening.
yeah, and I think even like, I mean, like what's Draisaitl's stats on the year? Like he's still putting up good numbers, but from what we're used to getting from him, we're like, geez, like he's got 46 points in 40 games, which is still like, I mean, that's still good over a point per game, but it's like, man, we're expecting Draisaitl to be in the minimum 105 points and then plus. Like
Yeah.
he's really been struggling, and so it's going
Those
to
are
be
the point
interesting
numbers
next
I would
year.
be hoping for from like Victor Hedman, like
Yeah,
just a bit over a point per game. Like that's a really good defenseman number, but for a guy who's
next year
been
though,
so otherworldly offensively, especially in the past several years, you definitely would
well,
expect more from him.
when we talked about it last week, we know what Draisaitl is already capable of, and next year's a contract year. Like
I mean, fuck. Look what
if
Sam
he
Reinhart,
goes out,
William
yeah,
Nylander are doing on contract years. A guy like Draisaitl,
who's
like
playing with McDavid and Bouchard now, who I think probably is probably going to be that third guy in the Norris finals with
yeah,
Makar and Hughes, who I think have already kind of locked up being 1 and 2, whichever way you want to go with it is.
yeah,
I would still give it to Quinn Hughes personally, um,
agree.
but it's like man, the possibilities of what Draisaitl could do next year,
It is
it's
interesting
gonna be crazy.
that it's always been the big, so many teams have it, the big four in Toronto, and it's the big two in Edmonton, but if Bouchard keeps playing this way, they kind of got a big three there now. They
I think
actually
you can
might
already
have
call it.
another all-star, superstar, talented guy like that. They've had great complementary pieces with them over the past few years. The Nugent Hopkins, the who's the dude who played for Toronto? Zach Hyman. Like, they've had guys that are really good with them, but clearly complementary pieces. This might be
Yeah,
another actual superstar, and that's interesting to see,
I think you can
especially with
already put him
movement.
in there. I think you can already call it the big three with those three. I think
Yeah,
Bouchard, like in the time already, I think he's made the case that you can you can get away with calling them that.
I would wait until maybe like 10 games into next season to say it personally, but I would not blame you for saying it at all.
Yeah. All right. Enough about Edmonton now. We've hyped them up after we bashed on them before.
Yeah.
Another pretty big milestone. Marc-Andre Fleury is now second all-time regular season goalie wins with 552. At this point now, it's really just how much can he pad into solidifying that second place spot for however long. Because no, I don't think anybody's beaten Broders, and especially not anytime soon at the very least. But
Definitely
congrats to
not
Fleury
soon.
there. That's and he's a weird one because I've seen a lot of people make the argument that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. I definitely think he is, and I think
It,
just this
yeah.
alone now, second all time in wins, he's got to be. If people are saying, um, Patrick Marleau's first ballot, you could go even just based off the fact he's the all time leader in games played, not even
Which
putting
matters.
into account everything else, like the 500 career goals and whatnot. But
500
this
over 500
locks
goals, so many
Fleury in.
points.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
this.
I think he was locked in as soon as he won the Vezina in 2021. I think he was
Yeah,
probably in before that, but I think that Vezina absolutely locked it down, despite my personal feeling that Vasilevsky should have won it. But second all time in wins, you can't get to that without being a Hall of Fame player.
yeah,
Like you can't. Like no bum rides a team's success to 552 regular season wins. That's so many.
yeah. And I get people's argument of he played with Crosby and Malkin up, but I mean, okay, like
Patrick Waugh
look
played
at
with
look at
Joe Sa-
Chicago.
Joe Sakic. He played with Peter Forsberg. Is Patrick Waugh not great? Like
Yeah,
good players play with good players, you can't drag them down because of that. Like you can do it when splitting hairs a bit, but for something the level of being a Hall of Famer, I don't think it's the same. Especially since he's won he's won 3 cups, but he's had a lot of success in Pittsburgh and in Vegas.
yeah,
Like he
yeah.
left
He
and was
was.
immediately the face of another franchise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also, just going to throw in, and of course they're different eras, but I would argue that's in his favor. Marc-Andre Fleury is tied in career save percentage with Martin Brodeur at a 912, sorry.
Wow.
And Martin Brodeur played in the dead puck era with a very good defensive Devils team. So I would say that 912 is a bit more impressive on Fleury's side.
Yeah. Yeah,
Granted,
that's actually impressive.
Brodeur
I didn't
has
know they
played
were tied there.
almost 250 more games, but
Yeah.
they are both over 1,000. Are they? I believe there's only 4 players all time who have played more than 1,000 goalie games. All right. Well, apparently my tab is going to crash if I try and sort by games played. There we go. Yeah, he's 4th all time in games played for goalies. Martin
That's
Brodeur,
pretty
Luongo,
impressive.
Waugh, and Fleury. Yeah,
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
yeah. I definitely agree that he is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah. I also like the one you brought up in here that Sidney Crosby's on pace for 50 goals this year, and if he does hit 50, that would also be his his 600th career goal,
Yeah,
which I
I
think is
didn't.
a pretty cool stat there.
Yeah, I did not realize that he must have started this year with 550 goals. Because yeah, if he that 50th goal will be 50 on the season, 600 in his career. That would be so cool to see him hit that in Pittsburgh at a home game.
Yeah.
That would be really fun to see.
Which other ones do we got here? Oh, I guess we can do the Chicago ones. Because they made a couple moves, and I don't think people have fully understood the concept of these moves. But to break them down, the Blackhawks signed Nick Foligno to a 2-year extension at 4.5 million per year, and they also signed Jason Dickinson to an extension at 2 years at 4.25 per year. Um, yeah, these are obviously overpays, but when you're a team like Chicago, who it has to just reach the cap floor,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what you got to do. And having a good veteran like Nick Foligno, who great locker room guy, will always stand up for your teammates, like we saw with Bedard, and then Jason Dickinson, based on his play this year, I think has earned that nice little payday.
Yeah.
So these are good signings for Chicago, good guys to have on their team as they're going through this tough time there for that franchise. And again, it's really just you gotta reach the cap floor. So that's a big part of what it also is kind of coming down to.
Yeah. They especially with losing Corey Perry, losing his contract, you got to make up that money somewhere. So,
Speaking of
you know,
Perry,
and it makes sense that they are signing all these guys to the same 2-year contract. So they're kind of lining everyone up to be like, all right, in 2 years, this is where we're going to be with Bedard, and we're going to see who's going to be his future line mates from here on out.
yeah. Speaking of Perry, he is eligible to sign elsewhere now.
Yep.
And it sounds like the Edmonton Oilers have actually been kind of kicking tires on bringing in Perry, which I think would be huge for them. I think he can add a lot to what that team is missing. So I mean, if the way the Oilers are playing, man, you bring him. The thing is, I guess if you bring in Perry, one of two things will happen. One, everything will fall apart, and because we've seen that before, where teams go out and get a guy, and he doesn't work. We saw it happen with the Coyotes getting Taylor Hall. Um, so it could either just the Oilers could fall apart, or they could hit that next level, and they could even be like that much more dominant. If you've now got a guy like Corey Perry slotting in on your fourth line and second power play unit or something, I think
Yeah.
could definitely help the Oilers reach another level to the one that they're already currently on.
Yeah. And I know there was a lot of people saying that they really didn't think any teams would take a chance on Perry, but I knew that the second he was eligible to be signed again, like there's got to be multiple teams like for the price you can get him at, he brings a lot of value, and especially if you have a weaker power play, which is interesting that you say Edmonton since they have a good power play, obviously. Uh, but even on that second power play, he can still provide quite a bit of value. He's still really skilled, even if he's getting pretty up there in age. So yeah, I think he would be a good fit in Edmonton. I've heard rumors that the Leafs are looking at him.
Yeah, of
Don't
course they are.
Of course they are. I got to assume Vegas is too, just because they get everyone that anyone's talking about. Despite them being at 50 out of 50 contracts, looks like they're the only team in the league with 50 out of 50 contracts.
The only thing is though, and this is one of the reasons that I think if Corey Perry does sign, I think it's also very similar to how the door's not completely closed on Zach Parise returning to the Islanders. Um, the biggest thing is, whatever team signs Corey Perry, he's taking up a roster spot, which means, unless you've got a rookie you're comfortable getting rid of for the rest of the season, you're going to have to put one of your current guys on waivers and potentially risk losing them, and then sending them down to the minors and kind of cutting ties with them for the rest of the season, which is a big thing. So I think if we see And Zach Parise would only go to the Islanders. He's made that, very clear if he ever does come back. But I think if we see guys like Perry and Parise, it'll probably be more around the trade deadline. When moves are already kind of being made and whatnot, and also potentially injuries. Like if you kind of get around to the trade deadline time, you've got a guy who isn't coming back or something. It makes it a little bit easier to go sign a guys, or if you're making some trades, you can open up a roster spot through that. To still give that player, a chance to go somewhere else and get some assets back, and then you can sign them.
Yeah.
So I think if he does sign, I think it'll be around that end of February or early March would be my best guess.
Is there
Unless a team makes a move at some point to open up a spot for him.
Yeah. Is there a limit or a deadline for when you can sign free agents?
You can't. I believe the deadline is after the trade deadline. You can no longer sign guys,
Okay.
which
'Cause
I
I
like because the
Yeah.
NFL is actually weird because you can have guys get it's an 18-week season, and you can have guys get cut in week 17, and then they can sign with a playoff team in week 18, and then go on a playoff run with them, which I'm not a fan of. I think I like the way the NHL has is once the trade deadline is hit and pass, it's like that's your team you're locked in with. The guys you've got signed and under contract is your team up until the end of the playoffs.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I know, the misconception is you can't make a trade after the trade deadline. When in reality, the rule is any player traded after the trade deadline cannot play on their new team until the next NHL season. So like you could make a trade after the deadline, but if you're going to the playoffs, that guy can't play for you.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
know it was 1 or 2 years ago in the second round, one of the teams made a trade, and I think both teams were eliminated from the playoffs or didn't make it. But I know a lot of people were like, "What? Can they do this?" And it was like, "Yeah, you just don't really see it that often. Most of these guys are on vacation by that point."
Yeah, and any trade talks that kind of happen around during the playoffs for teams that are out usually aren't don't come out or anything until like the draft or something. Like it's rumors kind of leading up, and then it either happens at the draft or like
Yeah.
during the beginning of free agency or something. It's not very often you actually see it happen while the playoffs are underway. But with that, what do we got? I think we only got a couple things.
Yeah, I got one here. Um Andrei Vasilevsky earlier this week recorded his 19th career assist with a secondary assist on Darren Radish's OT winner. So that's his 19th career point. Jonathan Quick with 20 and Marc-Andre Fleury, who we talked about earlier, at 21, are the only active goalies with more. Uh, Fleury has played 1,004 career games. Quick has played 767. Vasilevsky has only played 445, and he's already at 19. So,
Yeah,
not a massive, sexy stat that everyone loves to talk about, but Vasilevsky could have the chance to maybe go for like the NHL all-time goalie point record, which is a lot of secondary assists and whatnot, of course. But
yeah,
it's interesting that he's that high up with so few games played.
yeah, yeah. That is quite actually an impressive stat. He's already right up there with guys like Quick and Fleury, who are kind of unfortunately near the end of their careers, and Vasilevsky's still got many years to go. So he's only going to continue to just kind of surpass those guys, and then just continue to climb the ranks there.
Yeah, I've just pulled it up. Really expected Martin Brodeur to be leader in this category, especially with his 2 goals. But he has 47 points in his career, tied with Grant Fuhr. They're in second and third. Number 1 is Tom Barrasso with 48 points.
Oh, okay.
So 48 points. Vasi's already at 19. He is 29 years old right now, I believe. So it's definitely possible. I mean, it's not something you really see guys actively work towards other than going for the odd goalie goal.
Yeah, like if the assists happen, they happen, but like really, it's kind of out of the goalie's control for a lot of their assists. Like we
Yeah.
said, most of them are kind of secondary assists. Like unless you really see the goalie go out and play the puck and hit a long stretch pass to a guy to send him on like a breakaway or 2-on-1.
Yeah.
Usually, it's mostly the goalie just kind of gives it to their defenseman. Their defenseman gives it to a forward, and then they kind of do
Take a
their
shot
thing
and get it.
and score. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's funny because you only need 49 to be the all-time leader for that stat. Like, if you actively wanted that, like, as long as your team's like, in a playoff spot. If you're fighting for a playoff spot, your team's gonna tell you to pound sand. But like, if a team like Tampa was comfortably in a playoff spot, I could totally see a goalie being like, "Hey, guys on the power play, this could be an easy way to farm some secondary assists. So I just pass it to this guy. This guy goes in, take the shot, try it once a game, and see if you can rack up some extra assists. It'll be funny, you know. Like there's a couple random instances where we've seen guys like just get something in their head that they really want to do, and they just keep going for it. And if
Mhm.
they just keep going for it, eventually it works. Things like Zegras, how many Michigan goals he scored. Like he just he's just thinking about it while nobody else really is. And he's had some knocked down, but he's scored on two or three of them. So it,
Yeah,
it
I think
would
he's
be
only
funny
got.
to see something like that for
Does he
a
only
guy
have
to be
one?
like wanting it.
I think he
This
might
year he
actually only
has
have the
one.
one. Because the only
He's
other one I can think of is that flip pass.
he did have a Michigan goal that year.
Oh, did he? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't a skating one, it was like behind the net set up and do it.
Oh, just behind the net. Okay. Speaking of, while we're on the topic of goalies, just a couple kind of goalie trade news. So Mers Lincoln's
Yeah.
after winning in the shootout the other day, I believe it was against the Canucks, celebrated pretty hard, very emotional. And afterwards, he did say that he has requested a trade out of Columbus, I believe, after previously stating that he didn't. And now he
Yeah.
has confirmed that he has requested a trade out of Columbus. Guess what team is interested in him?
It I mean, I'm gonna go for it and I'm gonna say the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Nope. Starts with an N.
Would have been funny. New Jersey?
Nope.
That would have been interesting because they do need a goaltender.
No one. Not a single team is interested in Elvin's Lincoln's services.
Interesting.
Which I mean is kind of fair. He's never really been like a, and he's also stated that like he's like, I'm a number one goalie. I'm not being a backup or a third stringer. Like I'm the guy. First of all, I don't think the way he's been playing necessarily warrants him to demand that he should be a starter, and to be like, yeah, I'm a starter, I'm not going to be a backup is um
I it's
a little rough.
It's a bit of a bold claim, but I don't think it's unfair by any means. He is a 906 this year, which is a decent bit above. It's about point oh six above the league average.
But a
And he's
322 save percentage. And the year before, an 876 save
but he's
percentage,
doing
a
he,
423.
he's doing that on a very bad Columbus Blue Jackets team. A 906 on Columbus this year, I think is absolutely nothing to sneeze at, and to carry yourself as an elite goaltender is a bit much. But to say that he feels like he's earned the starting position, I don't think is too unfair.
The biggest reason I think no one wants him is the fact that for the remainder of this year and the next 3 years after that, he comes in with the cap hit of 5.4.
And that makes it a lot harder.
So
If
I mean,
if he was on
that's
a
why
cheaper deal, and like
I
you said,
think
he
it's
does not have the history of fantastic
yeah.
numbers enough to warrant taking that on. Like that's a decent bit of a risk. You could end up with a an Edmonton situation there with Jack Campbell. So
Yeah, I think if anything, if Merzlikins truly believes in his mind that he deserves to be a starter in this league and he's only going to be a starter, I think he's got to ride it out with Columbus for the remainder of the season, and I think he might have to pull a Philip Zadina. And you know what? It's a lot of money he'd be leaving on the table, but if he truly believes that he can go somewhere and uh, be a starter, he might have to agree to a contract termination and then go sign somewhere else and pave out the rest of his career, because I just, with a cap hit of 5.4 and what he's done so far, I just don't see any team willing to risk bringing on that kind of contract for
yeah,
a player that might pan out for you, and then if he doesn't, then you're stuck with another Jack Campbell contract that would then become immovable if he goes to another team and can't piece it together. Um, so
yeah.
that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. The other one is Jacob Markstrom, who I don't think the Flames have officially, said he's on the trade block and they're going to trade him. But there has been some chatter surrounding him. This one does involve the New Jersey Devils, actually. It does sound like the Devils
Very
are
interesting.
interested in Jacob Markstrom. However, I love this for Calgary, especially for Craig Conroy. It sounds like if a Markstrom to New Jersey trade is going to happen, New Jersey is going to have to send either Dawson Mercer or Simone Nemec back to Calgary. And it sounds like if
Wow.
if one of those two players isn't involved, it doesn't sound like there's going to be a deal made.
If you're the Devils, would you entertain either of those guys one for Markstrom?
Well, and that's a thing, right? Like I know everybody's, more people are blown away. Like, well, Simone Nemec, you can't do that.
I was gonna
Dawson
say
Mercer is an interesting one because he's the main guy that San Jose wanted in the
the
Timo Meyer,
Timo Meyer.
and New Jersey was like, no way, we're not parting with him. Now that he's kind of having a little bit of a step back year, it makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's like New Jersey's realistically a Jacob Markstrom away from winning a cup within the
From
next
winning a
couple
cup.
years.
Even if you
So
lose, even if you trade a guy and he is incredible for another team for 20 years, nobody cares if you win the cup. You still won the trade. If he puts
yeah.
up 1,400 points over his career with the Flames, but you won the cup, fuck you, you won, right?
Well, and
So
that's like with
if you really think you're going for it, I mean, if Markstrom's looking good, you might just pull the trigger, even if it, in pure trade value, you might be losing.
oh, and a lot of people are like, man, I can't believe the Blues, gave up on Tage Thompson and this and this. They kind of got ruined. It's like, first of all, Tage Thompson was doing jack shit for St. Louis. I'm not even sure he would be where he wouldn't be anywhere near he is now if he didn't get out of St. Louis.
I don't think
Second of all,
so.
they got Ryan O'Reilly, who captained them to well, not captain, but kind of led them to a Stanley Cup and won the
The
Conn Smythe.
Blues,
So it's like,
at the very least, tied that trade. There is
I
no,
still think
there
they
is no,
won.
I was going to say, there
They
is
got
no
a cup.
universe where they lost. They win. It's either a win-win or a draw. Like, if you
Yeah.
win the cup after a trade, it's a win. Even if that guy was a role player, like, how goofy does it look that Tampa traded a first for Barclay Goodrow? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's not a guy you trade a first for. Everyone says that's a great trade because they won the cup. Like
And also, when you
that
think about it, if you win a
that
cup,
settles everything.
yeah, when you think about it, when you trade a first and you win the cup, it's the very end of the first. Basically, just call it a second round pick at that
Yeah.
point. So to give up a very end of the first, call it a second round pick to get a cup is like that's an easy win for the team that wins the cup, because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. If you have to give up a piece that goes on to have a successful career and he wouldn't for you and you end up with a cup, so be it. So
Yeah.
I think with New Jersey, I think Simon Nemec is untouchable.
I was
Which
gonna
I
say
think he's in a
that
tough
would be a
spot
massive
anyways.
win for Calgary if they could get Nemec out of the deal somehow, even if
Yeah.
they go Markstrom and something else.
I mean,
But
Simon
I
Nemec
doubt
is in
they'll
a
do
tough
that
spot just
because
because they've got Hamilton and Luke Hughes still.
that's true. But
But
not only has he looked really good in his time in the NHL, he's on his ELC for the next 3 years. So
mhm,
a guy that good at a minimal cap hit could be really beneficial to a team trying to win the cup in the next few years. So
yeah,
I doubt they're going to move him if they really are looking at going for the cup right now.
yeah. I think if anything, it would be Dawson Mercer, which I know Devils fans love him. But I think also you kind of look at the team and with contracts and whatnot, you're kind of getting to a point where
Someone's going to be the
he's
odd
gonna
man out.
yeah, someone's gotta like one of your young guys is gonna be the odd guy out. And that's just standard with the way it goes because guys
Yeah.
get better, contracts go up. Like I know the cap's going up with what they've got. Like I think he just ends up being the odd guy out, and
Yeah. And there's always
Calgary could
that
probably
guy
get
who
more.
ends up being the odd guy out. Tampa Bay did not want to get rid of Ross Colton, but that's what happens. The young guys play good, they get a next big contract, and you can't afford it. That's what
Yeah,
happens when you sign guys like Timo Meyer, Dougie Hamilton, Andre Palat, Tyler
yeah.
Toffoli. You can't afford all the young guys coming up anymore. So they're
Calgary could probably get more than just Mercer because they're in the
yeah.
power position because they hold all the cards. Like New Jersey wants
There's not a
their
lot of goalies out
goalie.
there.
Yeah, and
There's not a
Calgary
lot of
knows
goalies.
that New Jersey really doesn't have many other areas to turn to. And I think out of goalies available, I think Markstrom's the number one. Like if Calgary
Yeah,
comes out and says, he's available, which I think he will be, just because you've something's got to move for Dustin Wolf to come up.
they
And it's
got to
like, well,
get
I
him
think
playing.
where Markstrom's at in his career, he wants to go on playoff runs. And I don't think that's unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen with Calgary.
No, I think they're
So
going into a small scale rebuild. I think it's a bit more than a retool, but I don't think they're
yeah.
blowing it up completely. I mean, they've got a couple long-term contracts they can't really,
Mhm.
but
So I think Markstrom becomes available, and then he's the goalie that that teams are searching for a goalie are going to go after. So
yeah, unless
if it becomes a
Washington
bidding war,
decides that they're slipping and they can't make the playoffs and they unload Kemper, I think Markstrom's
yeah,
definitely the guy.
I think I'd still have I would probably still have Markstrom over Kemper. And I mean, if they're both available or whatnot, and you get teams getting into bidding wars, like that just drives the price up even more because you're like, hey, they're offering me this. What are you going to do to increase your offer? Are you going to throw in an extra prospect? You're going to bump that second to a first? Like it's
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see if I I I don't want to say when yet, but I almost feel like when Markstrom gets moved this year, it'd be interesting to see what that um what that haul is that Calgary gets back because they're in the position of strength and it's not even like they're hurting them because you move Markstrom, you bring in all these pieces, and guess what? You got Dustin Wolf coming up now to replace him.
yeah.
So it's I mean, I know Flames fans love Markstrom, but I think trading Markstrom is a huge win for them
I think it just makes too much
because
sense right now. And it
yeah,
does suck when the best course of action is to get rid of a guy that you really like. Uh, but that in a salary cap era, that's just how it is, you know. Of course, I'm always gonna relate things back to Tampa, but nobody in Tampa's fan base wanted to see Ryan McDonough leave, but you couldn't afford the cap hit, and
yeah.
to improve the team going forward, you got to make the move.
And if you're gonna trade Markstrom, might as well do it now while he's playing. Like we saw him kind of have a little bit of a
He's been
slip up
very
last year.
streaky
He's
over the
bounced
last
back.
several years.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
bounced back really good this year. Not only that, he's on a pretty decent deal. Like he's I mean, not like he's only making, but he's making $6 million. But that's for the remainder of this year and the next 2 years. So if you're trading for him, you've got him. You're running with him for this year and the next 2 years. Um, so which I think just adds to the value even more. It's not like you're trading for, a goalie who's going to be a UFA at the end of the year and he can decide to go off afterwards and kind of leave you high and dry. You've got him. So again, I know Flames fans love him, but I think if you're going to move him, you got to do it. You got to do it this year.
Yeah. And, we were talking about Merzlikins not having the resume. These are Markstrom's full season save percentages, starting from 16-17. 9-10 in 25 games played, 9-12 and 60, 9-12 and 60, 9-18 and 43, 9-04 and 43, 9-22 in 63 games. Like, what a season. And then last year he had his down year, an 892 and 59. That's bad, but it's not out of the league bad. And it's clearly a down year. And then this year he's back up to a 912 and 26.
Not only that, the year he put up a 922, he had 9 shutouts as well.
And consistency. It's funny because recently we are so accustomed, especially being from Calgary, we hear all about people complaining about it. You hear so much about his inconsistency. You look at his career by the year stats. That's incredible consistency. He's got like 4 years with a 912 in there.
Yeah, and right now I can't remember what the exact number was, but it's starting to become now where, before it was like when you've got a goalie, you wanted to have at least a 910 to like a 915 save percentage type, right?
Yeah.
Like to kind of be like a consistent starter. That's gone down to like now if you got a goalie that's even just putting up a 900 save percentage, that's solid. That's a starter. So the fact that he's above that and has been doing it consistently, and I don't think I'd call Calgary a defensive specialist team by any means.
They've got some good defensemen individually, but as a team, not really. Yeah, I know I do believe we covered this a couple months ago on the podcast, looking at year-by-year save percentages, but 2015 to 16, the league average save percentage was 915. And then going to more recent years, 913, 912, 910, 910, 908, 907, 904, and this year is also 904.
Yeah.
The league average has consistently gone down over the past several years. So
thank Auston Matthews for that.
Yeah, exactly. And like it was so ludicrous in 18-19 when Kucherov hit 128 points. Like that was so unthinkable. Nobody would be that surprised if 3-4 guys hit that this year. That's a lot of points, but there's a lot of guys who can do it. There's scoring is up so much. So having a 900 save percentage it's only 0.04 below the average. And having a 910, that's pretty damn good now.
Well, and even before, like I'd think back 5, 6, 7 years, it would always be like, who's the first to hit 50 goals this year? Now it's like, it doesn't really matter who's the first to hit 50. It's how many are going to hit that 50 mark this year.
Yeah. How many are hitting 50 and who's going to hit 60?
How many are hitting 60?
Yeah. Like we had
70.
We had 2 people score 60 goals last year. Like that's so nuts. Like other than that, who's scored 60 goals in the last 20 years? Stamkos, Ovechkin, and then in the last 2 years we've had 3 guys do it in McDavid, Matthews, and Pasternak. So scoring's going up, especially for the top end guys. So I think people have not really realized that, and they're a bit tough on goalies with their stats. Before a 900, like anything starting with an 8 was like you're out of the league. I think if you're at an 898, if you're a backup, I think that is just fine.
I completely agree. Um, yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. With that though, what do we want to hop into next? We only got a couple here left, and some of
Yeah,
them
I
are
think we've got
a little
2 or
easier
3.
to kind of
I
fly
got
through.
I got one that's got a bit more details on it that I put in here. Um, but Cody Hodgson is currently attempting to make his NHL comeback. He was drafted in 2008 by the Vancouver Canucks, 10th overall. He was forced to retire at age 26 after being diagnosed with a malignant hyperthermia. Uh, this is when he was 26. He is now 34 in February. He previously skated in 328 NHL games between the Canucks, Sabres, and Predators. 142 points in 328 games. That's not bad. That's like a 35 points per season average. His best season came during the lockout shortened 2012-2013 campaign when he put up 15 goals and 19 assists in 48 games with the Sabres. Um, yeah, he's been out of the league for what is that, 8 years, and he's apparently been training like 6 days a week, skating, and he's trying to make a comeback after dealing with health issues this whole time. Uh,
Yeah.
and it looks like some teams are actually looking at him, and that would be an incredible
He
story
he
if he
just
made that.
he's just recently signed a PTO with the Milwaukee Admirals in the AHL, so that is Nashville's AHL club. So, Nashville's already they've already kind of brought him into the fold, and he's on a PTO, so it's kind of a
Yeah, and
like
he's one
see
of
how you do, see how you fit in. If you can earn a contract, then we'll kind of go from there type of thing.
that'd be
So the,
interesting.
the door's
Nashville, one
open
of
there
those
for him there.
3 teams that he had played with before. So if he was able to get back to the league, that would just be an incredible story to see that
Yeah.
come full circle.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were talking earlier this season about Brandon Sutter. He was dealing with those long term COVID issues. Took a couple years off. He was ready to come back. Signed with the Oilers, and then a couple games later, he couldn't do it, and ended up retiring. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes for Hodgson, and how now that being back in that high paced game and whatnot. If he's able to kind of, you know, able to keep up, and if his body can handle it, and most importantly, can he secure a contract there and maybe work his way up into being part of the Predators lineup, maybe at some point this season or maybe next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You wonder if maybe Barry Trotz over in Nashville, if does he expect him to make the team, or does he think maybe he'll be a kind of a player consultant, teach guys some stuff. Does he want him to be more of a staff guy later on if he can't make the league? So it'll be very interesting to see, does he make a team, or does he get a job with the team on their staff instead?
Yeah, do I think he makes it back to the NHL this year? No. But I could see it being something of, he signs with the Milwaukee Admirals for the rest of the season, and then maybe re-signs with Nashville, and then is actually given a chance, throughout training camp and whatnot next year
Yeah.
to the team. Or maybe he goes into the AHL, he impresses, and that's all Nashville wanted for him. They just wanted to give him a chance to get back and showcase he can still play, and then he can go into free agency and potentially sign elsewhere. And if maybe he just, and I mean, no team goes out of their way to sign a guy and make him part of the team just for you know just to make people be like, oh, that's sweet of them. Like it's still a business, and teams are still trying to win. um but if it's something of down in the AHL where it's, he's if they're a playoff team and he can help them, and then that can just set him up to go off and get a chance somewhere else, that's a very realistic possibility as well for him. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how he does, and where he does he stick with Nashville, or does he go elsewhere, and then can he make the jump back into the NHL that's evolved quite a bit since the last time he's played now.
Yeah. So if anything evolves on the situation with Cody Hodgson, we'll definitely keep you up to date on that.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure. A little
Uh,
bit more of a darker
yeah,
side of hockey. Colorado Avalanche forward Valerie Nikuskin has decided to enter the NHL Players Assistance Program. Um, I mean, I kind of feel like this was
I
I
think
kind of
this
bound
is
to
his
happen just
second
based off
time
what
in the.
happened.
I think this is his second time in the PA. If
Oh, is
I
it?
recall correctly, I believe I saw that. I can double
Because I
check
know
that.
there's the incident in the playoffs last year that occurred in Seattle, which did just force him to just step away from the team. Um, but yeah, like this isn't the first time we've heard of something revolving him and you know this type of stuff. So hopefully, entering this program, I mean, and I mean, we can only speculate, but you can maybe
Yeah,
make the assumption that Sam Gerard just came back from it, and maybe um that kind of helped lean Nikuskin into this decision, and seeing a buddy and a teammate go down this road and go into the program and seeing him come back and better and healthier and happier, maybe gave him a little motivation to make that jump for himself in doing this. Um,
yeah, and just with multiple guys now from the Avalanche going into the player assistance program, I do wonder how many of them does it have anything to do with Nathan McKinnon. He's been very open over the past few years about how much the sports therapists and the mental health coaches in the Avalanche organization have helped him reach the next level of his game and just be a better person. So I do wonder if, as a bit of a leader in that locker room, do they, you know, bounce the idea off of him and he says absolutely do what you need to do? Like
yeah,
I I think everything he said on it seems very good coming from McKinnon, and I think he's cultivating a good locker room there.
yeah, yeah. I completely agree with that. But yeah, not a whole lot to really say on it. Just we hope that obviously he gets the help he needs and can come back better and happier and healthier moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna throw back in that I did Google it, and I obviously everything coming up is recent, so I'm going to take back that this is his second time in the program since I cannot find any evidence of him being there before.
No, there we go.
I'm going to
Um,
assume that I'm crazy.
just I think kind of the couple of the final things we got here. Minnesota Wild defenseman Jared Spurgeon. We now know that he's out for the remainder of the season after undergoing hip and back surgery. Um, it's a huge loss for that Wild team, but again, I don't think they're real threats to make the playoffs. So
And I think they knew
it's not like
that.
their playoff hopes are dashed or anything. And I think it helps soften the blow a little bit. Now that that you've got a guy like Brock Faber who can play those minutes and carry that workload that they're going to be missing with Spurgeon out.
Yeah. Tampa just beat I believe the final score was 7-3 Lightning over the Wild tonight. Even in that game though, Brock Faber looked great. He
Yeah,
was out there for so many minutes and he played fantastically. So
yeah, he's
they
very
they got a good one
consistent.
in him. The ESPN announcers were very high on him, saying you love to see a guy that plays this well, especially when it's a guy that you can have for the next 20 years on your franchise. So they uh
Yeah,
they already seem to have stapled him in there on Minnesota. They definitely think he's going to get a big extension.
yeah. Kind of one of the last things we got is the San Jose Sharks announced the other day that they not this season but next season they will be retiring Jumbo Joe Thornton's number 19. Again, one of those things we kind of knew it was going to happen. Is just a matter of when.
Yeah.
Um, he's currently living in San Jose still. He is present every now and then in Sharks practices. He's recently actually been out there from time to time helping and just kind of feeding pucks to Couture as he's trying to come back from whatever lower body injury he's been dealing with all season. And I think with this now, it's kind of it's slowly like again, we know it's going to happen, but we're slowly getting to that point where Joe Thornton is going to be brought into the franchise in some sort of role.
Yeah.
We've already seen with Patrick Marleau. We know Joe Thornton's he's going to be brought in and work with the franchise in some role. We don't know what it is, but we're getting closer and closer to that point. And this is just another step in it, and very well deserved for Joe Thornton to have his number 19 retired there in San Jose. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, bust out the golf claps for Jumbo Joe.
So yeah, congrats to Joe Thornton on that. Great
What
career.
what do you think the odds are? Because obviously, David Quinn has not looked like he has done a fantastic job in San Jose. Do you think there's any chance that they're maybe holding on to him for another season and then looking to put Joe Thornton behind the bench?
No, I
Do you
don't
think
think so
he's
because
not
again, I
not
think
looking
it's
for a
just
coach situation, or do you think the time's not right?
the time is definitely not right.
You don't
It's
want
just
to
a
put him in
tough
too
one.
early, kind of like the Alfredson situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is like it's just bringing in former players to be like the coach or not, and then if you have to go down the road of firing them is tough. I realistically really could see him potentially coming in as something to like in the future like an assistant GM role or maybe doing stuff with player development like with what Patrick Marlowe's kind of in and doing.
Yeah,
Um you know d- I think if you gave it time and the Sharks were able to actually, they come out of this rebuild and they've got their young pieces and now got a good team in place. It's not out of the question because I think, Joe Thornton's a guy that, again, he's one of those guys that he was so good because of his hockey sense and the way he sees the game and is able to read it, which I think is crucial to have in a coach. Um, and obviously he's well respected by basically everyone minus David Perron and Peter Mrazek. Um, so I mean, it's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, because again, it's just you never want to go down that road of having to fire Joe Thornton in San Jose type of thing, right? So,
yeah, that's fair.
I just opened up something. This is just random. But we saw with Tampa Bay with their new kind of crossover at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with their new alternate jersey. Um, Someone tweeted out, and this isn't confirmed, but there's rumors that with San Jose's new third jersey, it could have 30 stripes on the sleeve, which
Jeez,
I think would just be is a little kind
Sound-
of extreme. Like
sounds like a bit
30
much.
is quite a bit. But like if they do that, it'd be maybe cool to see what something like that would look like. Um, the last thing I got though
Yeah.
before we
I do just want to throw in quickly the they do kind of do a bit of a promotional stuff with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but this isn't the
yeah.
first time Tampa Bay's done the pirate themed jerseys, just because they do a lot of stuff for Gasparilla,
Oh,
which
okay.
is some. I believe there was a pirate whose last name was Gasparilla, who is famous in the Caribbean, and I don't know if it was his birthday or a day he did something cool, but yeah, they have like a big parade that's like all pirate themed, and I guess that's why their football team is the
Oh, okay.
Buccaneers. But yeah, they make one every year, and uh, I think it something happened. Like they started celebrating it in Tampa Bay in like 1906, and so they made 1,906 of these jerseys, and that's cool. But you're an NHL team. Please make more than 2,000 jerseys. They sold out in like 5 minutes. They
Yeah.
look so sick, and like not even a chance to get them. They sold out so fast. I really
Yeah.
wish they would have made more because they look really cool.
Yeah. The last thing before we just kind of hop into like what the stats leaders are looking like before we hop off here. Going back to the AHL, this is a really interesting one because I can't even remember seeing anything like this. Um, So the Syracuse Crunch were playing the Utica Comets the other night. Have you seen this?
I did see this, yes.
This is like nuts. Like, so Syracuse was up
I love it.
2-1, 9.5 minutes through the first period. They had a 5-on-3, and this was in the first period. They decide to pull their goalie to make it a 6-on-3, in which Utica fires it all the way down the ice and into the empty net to tie the game. Uh, bold coaching strategy there to pull the goalie like that.
This is shades of Sergei Fedorov in the Russian league in the KHL. He's done things like this before. Yeah, they had, if you pull, like, obviously pulling the goalie's ludicrous in the first period, but a 6-on-3, like,
Yeah.
surely if you have possession, you can score on a 6-on-3, right? So it's crazy, but it's crazy like a fox. And uh maybe just because it's Syracuse, which is Tampa Bay's AHL team, I kind of love it. It's so chaotic, but like John Cooper has pulled the goalie numerous times with like 7 or 8 minutes left if we're down by 3 goals and we really need to score. And I kind of love the unhinged coaching style. Is it smart? I would not say so, but something is really fun to watch the coaches be the one to be a little crazy sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's
honestly,
just
who
interesting.
knows
Yeah.
if it would have worked, because a 6-on-3 is fairly easy to score on. And uh, if you've seen the goal, the guy has it down in the corner and horrible pass. He tries to go through a dude and it just hits him in the leg. And the guy just like backhand clears it wildly and it ends up going in the net in the other end of the ice. Like,
And it's one of those
he could have
things.
made 3 much more safe passes. So it's wild that
Yeah.
he decided to go to the middle of the ice, but uh I kind of dig the idea he was going for.
Well, and it's one of those things, right, where if Syracuse scores, then it's like, oh, the coach looks like a genius for pulling off this mastermind thing. It
Yeah.
just so happens that it didn't, it ended up with a goal against. So people are making fun of them, but it's like everyone would be hyping them up if they pulled it off and it worked. So,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like you can't bash on because it's like we would be loving it if it worked out for him. It's just one of those interesting things that you never really ever kind of see.
Yeah, it's very rare that that kind of stuff happens. Uh Especially in, not even the NHL, but the AHL even. Like, you don't see it much. If you see something like this, generally it's in, some league in Europe you've never heard of. Um
Yeah.
so it was a very funny clip to happen upon the other day.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that kind of wraps up everything we had. Which means it is time for stats leaders. And bear in mind when you do goals, add a 3 in there for Auston Matthews.
Yep, I've been keeping a mental note. I keep refreshing it, and the page that I'm on is not refreshing, but I know each of the top players, what they did tonight, and I'm going to adjust the numbers accordingly.
Perfect. Let's dive right in.
And you know what? I'll explain the goalies when I get to it. But uh, for the stat leaders as of the night of January 18th. In first place for the league lead in points, we have Nikita Kucherov back on top with 75 points. And we have in second Nathan McKinnon with 73. And in third, we have David Pasternak with, I believe, 64. I think he got a hat trick tonight.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, there it is. Pasternak got
Oh,
a
wow. I
got a
didn't
hat
even hear
trick.
about that. Oh, there you go. So he's
Uh,
continuing to rack up the goals still.
Yeah. I've been expecting to see him show up on this goals list for a while. I'm surprised he hasn't yet. For league leading goals, starting to run away with it, but not as much as you'd think. Auston Matthews in first, obviously, with 37 now. In second place, we got Sam Reinhart with 33, and in third, we got Nikita Kucherov with 28. In plus minus, we got Ty in first with a great defensive pair in Philip Hronik and Quinn Hughes, both at 33. tied for third, we got Dylan DeMello and Gustav Forsling with 28. And I'm going all the way down to 5 just because shout out to Blake Coleman, a plus 24 on the Calgary Flames. Great
Yeah.
job there.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
And then for...
Also, Blake Coleman not getting like any power play time too, really. He's getting a lot of it done 5-on-5.
Yeah, he's a beast 5-on-5 and really good on the penalty kill as well. I'm not sure how much he plays the penalty kill in Calgary, but I know for Tampa Bay he was phenomenal on the PK.
Yeah.
And I decided at some point that I don't want to do save percentage the way ESPN has it because it's all backups. But I'm gonna do minimum games played 21. That's a little under half the games most teams have played. So generally the starters will be shown up here. But also we're gonna look at the league leaders in goals saved above expected.
Okay.
It's a little bit more of a off the board stat, but it's a bit more in depth on who's really performing when their team wins. And that definitely shows up in these numbers. So in first, we got Connor Hellebuck with 20.5 goals saved above expected. In second, we got Thatcher Demko with 16.4. And then in third and fourth, we have Jacob Markstrom and Connor Ingram with 13.4 and 13.1 goals saved above expected. So stick taps to those goalies. They are absolutely keeping their teams in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that one, too, Hellebuck and Demko, that makes a lot of sense with how their teams are right on top of the league.
Yeah. That definitely is.
Yeah.
Is that all the goalie stats?
Yeah, that's everything. I'll just throw in a 3.9 goals saved above expected for one Capo Kakinen.
Yeah.
The San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, as bad as the Sharks have been, especially, well, not only offensively, but defensively, they've been getting very, very good goaltending. Despite and that's a thing, right? You see the straight up save percentage and goals against and the wins, and it's like, oh, they suck. But like their advanced stats are actually are quite good when you consider what team they're on and what they've got in front of them. So, and I think Kakinen is one of those guys that it will get moved at the deadline. And the way he's been playing, it'll be kind of interesting to see what the
I hope they get a decent bid for him.
Could get.
He has been really good. Just for fun, so Capo Kakinen, you'd assume he's not doing great. 899 save percentage. I'm going to list the 5 goalies below him in goals saved above expected. Andrei Vasilevsky, Ilya Sorokin, Carter Hart, Alexander Gorgiev, and Jake Ottinger.
Yeah.
He has saved more goals above expected than all 5 of those guys. Like,
yeah.
Dude his save percentage starting with an 8 does not do properly service what he's doing for the Sharks right now.
Yeah. Just one final thing before we hop out of here, because it's something I want to keep an eye on, because I was very kind of stern on this because I did believe it was going to happen, and so I kind of want to keep an eye on it throughout the rest of the season to see. When we were talking about William Nylander signing his extension, and I said, you know, we've seen it in the past where once guys sign that extension, their production dips a little bit. So since signing his massive 8-year extension, his very first game after it played the San Jose Sharks, where he had 3 assists. So nothing crazy. Like Pat Maroon could do that. Well, Pat Maroon's a beast, but so not a great comparison. But since then, no points against the Islanders, no points against Colorado, no points against Detroit, no points against Edmonton, and then he got 2 assists tonight against Calgary. So, I mean, for a guy that was at least putting up like a point like every game
He was
all the way.
well above a point per game. So
And then and I don't even really want to include that San Jose game because that was a game in Toronto and Toronto stomped San Jose 7-1. Like it was like anyone could have easily put up 3 assists in that game. But then it's interesting to see that, he goes 4 games without logging a single point in his shots. Like he was still shooting, he was still getting lots of ice time. And again, it's not like Nylander's a bad player. It's just always one of those things that I notice
it's a
of when
4 or 5 game sample, but it is interesting to take a look at considering how much he was producing.
yeah, and that's the
Just before
thing.
that.
Like it's not like in obviously every player goes through slumps. Like that's just part of the game. But it's just interesting that he didn't have a slump all year, but then it was as soon as he signed that deal, like you wonder if maybe he took his foot off the gas a little bit now that the contract is signed and he's getting that money either way now. But
Yeah.
I think
And
he'll
I
still
think it's
hit
no
100
question that
points.
he
Like
did take his foot off the gas a bit. I think every player would really. Like every player's best seasons are their contract years, it feels like.
unless you're a
All,
McDavid or
and
Crosby type guy,
yeah,
those
unless
guys
you're this
never take their foot off.
legitimately franchise potential players, like a lot of these guys have their best years on the contract year, and it yeah, we'll see exactly how much in the rest of the season and next year, how much he goes back down to his career average, or does he bring it back in the next 10 games? Who knows? So we'll see
Yeah,
how good he plays from here on out.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But with that, I think that kind of wraps up everything we've got, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well then, thanks once again to everybody for listening to yet another episode of the Stick 'em Up podcast. We release episodes every Friday. We sometimes throw out random episodes here and there, depending on some crazy news. We might come out with one early in the next week. Maybe we'll do one kind of touching on the All-Star game, the All-Star rosters and whatnot, now that we know the full rosters after the All-Star vote and who's going to be partaking in the new and improved skills competition that they're doing. Maybe we'll sit down and talk about that and give the All-Star game some love. But if you want to join in on the conversations with us and whatnot, feel free to follow us on Twitter/X. I'm going to continue to call it that because it'll always be Twitter to me. Speaking of which, if you're an avid Twitter or now X user, go check out Elon Musk because he has been on a bit of a rampage and posting some pretty wacky stuff for the guy who owns the platform. So that should show you that you can say whatever you want on there. So feel free to bash us as much as you want on there because it is approved. We're also on Instagram at SEU Hockey. You can find us on there. And with that, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.